My name is Lillian Archer. I'm 65 years old. I was never glamorous, never wealthy. Just a mother, not perfect but present. I raised 2 kids alone after my husband died. Daniel was only 10. I worked night shifts as a hospital nurse, came home exhausted, but always showed up. School plays, science fairs, college applications, I was there. Always. When Daniel got into Harvard, I cried. Not because I was surprised, but because every hour worked. Every meal skipped to pay tuition. Every moment alone had meant something. Or so I thought. I even used part of my retirement savings to fund his first year. Jasmine's family, of course, took over after that powerful, wealthy, influential. I didn't mind. I just wanted to matter in his future. 2 years ago, I bought a modest 3-bedroom house in Oak Park. Not for myself, for Daniel. I imagined him living there after graduation, starting a family. I picked out soft gray walls, renovated a home office, added custom bookshelves. Everything chosen with love. Everything prepared for him. Then came my 65th birthday. I wore my nicest dress. I baked blueberry muffins, his favorite. I even wrapped a small gift, a tie clip I hoped he'd wear in court one day. At 10:17 a.m., he called from a cafe in Boston. His voice was warm, distracted, full of noise and other priorities. I was proud of him. I told him so. Then I mentioned my flight for his graduation. I'd found a hotel, I said. I'd be there. He hesitated, then said the words, "I'll never forget." Thing is, Mom, seating's limited. Jasmine's dad invited some big names. I can't get you a ticket. I didn't cry. I looked at the muffins, stale already, and I thought, so this is what it feels like to be erased gently. I smiled. I told him it was okay. And when I hung up, I looked around the house I built for him, and whispered to myself, then maybe this house doesn't fit either. And that's when everything began to change. The morning after Daniel's call, I sat in my kitchen still wearing the soft blue birthday dress. The house was too quiet, too clean, like it had been holding its breath, and finally exhaled disappointment. A plate of muffins sat on the table untouched, already hard. I hadn't eaten. I hadn't slept much either. I just sat there. I kept telling myself, it's just one day, just one event. Don't overthink it. I folded laundry like a machine. I watered plants that didn't need it. I cleaned cabinets that were already spotless. But the silence was loud, deafening. And Daniel, he didn't call back. Not even a text. Nothing. I kept hoping he'd realize how much it hurt. That he'd call and say, Mom, I made a mistake. Of course I want you there. But hope, when one-sided, starts to rot inside you, like muffins left out overnight. 3 days passed. Then Claire called my daughter. Her voice was steady, warm like always. How was your birthday? Mom, I lied. It was nice. Quiet. Daniel called. She paused. Did he say when he's coming home? I hesitated. No. He's busy. Law school. Big internship. She didn't press. She never does. She just said one thing. You deserve more than that, Mom. And somehow those words hurt even more. Because I knew she was right. All these years I had brushed it off, the forgotten holidays, the missed birthdays, the silence. I convinced myself that Daniel loved me, that he was just busy, that one day he'd come around, but now I wasn't so sure. That night I opened the hallway closet and pulled out a box labeled Daniel's Future. Inside were swatches of fabric design sketches and color palettes. I had dreamed of how he and Jasmine would live here, maybe a baby someday. One notebook even had nursery ideas. I sat on the floor surrounded by pastel paint chips and cried. Not loud, not messy, just silent tears into my sleeve. Some changes don't come with a bang. They don't come with slammed doors or screaming arguments. They come in silence, slow, steady, like the way cold seeps into an empty room. After Claire's call, I couldn't stop thinking about what she said. "You deserve more than that, Mom." I started looking at my house differently. The kitchen still smelled faintly of bleach and blueberry muffins. The guest room, once meant for Daniel and Jasmine, was untouched. I had ironed the sheets, chosen the curtains, even placed a lavender candle by the window. All of it waited for people who never came. I wandered into the room meant to be Daniel's home office. It was perfect soft gray walls, built-in shelves, natural light. Still in one drawer, a small plaque I had made Daniel Archer-esque. I never gave it to him. I had thought too soon. Now it just felt foolish. I stood in the middle of the room for a long time. Then I whispered to no one. What am I doing? Why am I still waiting? That night I called Margot, my neighbor. She was bold, silver-haired, ran a downtown gallery, and didn't believe in sugarcoating life. When she picked up, I didn't say hello. I just asked, "Is your daughter still looking for a house?" She paused. "Yes." "Why, because I think I'm ready to sell." There was a long silence on the line, then a gentle voice. "Lillian, are you sure I wasn't?" Not fully, but I replied, "I think I'm done waiting for people to come home." The next morning I met with the realtor. We sat at the same kitchen table where I once helped Daniel with math homework. My hand trembled as I signed the listing agreement, not from regret, from release. I had been holding my breath for so many years, and now I finally exhaled. I didn't tell Daniel, and I didn't tell Claire. Not yet. Instead, I began to prepare the house as if it were a guest finally allowed to leave. I polished the doorknobs, washed the windows, put out fresh tulips in the hallway. It wasn't sadness I felt, not really. It was clarity. I found old trophies in the closet, dusty with years. Soccer awards, spelling bees, a debate medal. And tucked inside one of Daniel's old shoeboxes, a note in child's handwriting. "Dear Mom, when I grow up, I'm going to buy you a big house and take care of you forever." I sat on the floor holding that note in my hands. I didn't cry. Not out of bitterness. Out of grief. Because he had meant it? Once. But promises don't always grow up with the people who make them. Some moments in life don't explode, they leak. A little crack, barely heard, then another, until the weight of silence becomes unbearable. That's what the house felt like after Daniel's call. Not broken, just hollowed, like something vital had quietly seeped out through the floorboards. I moved through it like a ghost. The room that was supposed to be Daniel's home office had always been my favorite. The light hit just right in the mornings. I used to stand there imagining him sitting at the desk, surrounded by law books, a diploma on the wall. I imagined Jasmine laughing softly in the kitchen, maybe a baby napping in the next room. Now that same room felt like a museum to a life that never happened. I opened the drawer of the built-in desk. Inside, a small wooden plaque I had ordered 2 years ago, Daniel Archer-esque. It still had its protective wrap on. I had never given it to him. Back then I told myself too early. Now it was too late. I sat down, staring at the plaque. My fingers traced the letters as tears welled in my eyes. Not from rage, but from the slow ache of recognizing that someone you love has slowly, almost politely stopped needing you. The next few days I drifted through rooms as if visiting memories. In the guest room, I found a blanket I had chosen specifically for Jasmine, soft, elegant, cream-colored. I still remembered how long I spent reading reviews online. She never saw it. In the closet, I pulled out a box I had labeled years ago in neat handwriting. Daniel's future. Inside were fabric swatches, nursery color palettes, furniture layouts. Every idea I ever had for building the perfect beginning for him. There was even a little notebook I'd started when he was in high school. On the first page, I had written in all capital letters, "Start with love." I held that notebook in my lap. and cried. The kind of crying that doesn't need sound, just stillness, and the permission to mourn what could have been. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the living room surrounded by sketches and plans that no longer had purpose. The clock ticked. The shadows shifted. At some point, I whispered aloud, "Why am I still waiting?" It wasn't a question for Daniel. It was for me. That's when I made the call to Margot, my neighbor. She had a grown daughter looking to buy her first home. When Margot picked up, I skipped all pleasantries. "Is your daughter still looking for a place?" She hesitated. "Yes." "Why, I think I'm ready to sell." There was a beat of silence. Then softly, "Lillian, are you sure I didn't answer directly?" I didn't need to. She knew. She always. It was a Tuesday when the for sale sign went up. I stood at the end of the driveway holding a cup of coffee, watching the real estate agent stake the sign into the front lawn like it was just another job. For him, it was. For me, it was the end of a chapter 20 years long. I didn't cry. I didn't stop him. I just watched as the letters tilted slightly in the breeze. For sale. Move in ready. That part was true. The house had always been ready for someone. I just didn't know it wouldn't be Daniel. I spent that week cleaning every room like I was hosting someone important. Fresh tulips in the hallway, new cushions on the sofa. I scrubbed the grout between kitchen tiles with a toothbrush. Maybe I was trying to impress the universe. Or maybe I just needed to prove to myself that none of it had been in vain. The first showing was on Saturday. I didn't want to be there. I left early and sat in a small cafe 3 blocks away with a cup of tea I barely touched. I watched families walk past the window, couples, children's strollers. Once I spotted a pregnant woman holding hands with her husband. They looked at each other like they were building something new. I used to picture Daniel and Jasmine like that. I used to picture myself walking beside them. But there I was alone watching someone else's dream unfold through glass. That afternoon, the realtor texted, "We have multiple offers. One couple is expecting. They love the office, called it the perfect nursery. They want to move quickly." I read the message 3 times. The room I had built for Daniel's law books would now be a baby's room. Not his baby, not our dream, but someone else's. And strangely, I didn't feel angry. I felt replaced, not bitter, not betrayed, just quietly removed like a book pulled from a shelf and never put back. That night I packed up the last box from the linen closet. At the bottom, folded between towels, I found something I hadn't seen in years, a tiny pair of baby shoes. Daniel's first. I held them in my hands for a long time, the soft leather already stiff with time. And for the first time in a while, I allowed myself to whisper something I hadn't dared say aloud. "He's not coming back, is he?" The house wasn't haunted, but I was. Haunted by hopes that no longer had a home. The sale closed on a Thursday. The night before, I sat in the middle of my empty living room, the same room where Daniel took his first steps, where we once played board games on rainy Saturdays. Now it echoed. Every sound bounced back at me, like a memory I didn't ask to remember. Boxes were stacked by the front door, some labeled "Keep," others "Donate." There were no dramatic goodbyes, no ceremony, just me sitting quietly with the keys in my hand, knowing I wouldn't be passing them to my son. I had imagined this moment so differently. For years I pictured standing by the door, Daniel beside me, Jasmine holding a baby, all of us smiling as I said, "Welcome home." But instead, I was the one walking away. No one there to wave goodbye, no arms to hug me, no turning back. I rented a small apartment on the edge of town, month to month. Just a temporary space. I told myself I needed time to think, to breathe, to figure out what comes next. Claire called a few days later. She had seen the house listing online. "Mom," she said gently, "are you okay?" "I'm fine," I replied, folding towels slowly. "It's just a house. Too much space for one person." She hesitated. "You're not just doing this because of Daniel." "Right." I didn't answer right away. Then softly I said, "I'm doing this because I realized I've been living in a future that only existed in my imagination." It's time I woke up. That night, for the first time in years, I slept through the night. No dreams, no waiting, just quiet. 2 days later, Daniel called. I stared at his name on the screen. My thumb hovered over the green icon. Once, twice, 3 times it rang. "Hi, Mom," he said. His voice was casual, like nothing had changed. "Sorry I haven't checked in. Finals have been brutal. Jasmine's parents are throwing a little party after graduation. I think there might be an extra seat. I could try to get you in." I closed my eyes. Now that everything was arranged, now that seats were handed out and tables were set, I could maybe be squeezed in, like an afterthought. "That's very kind of you," I replied, voice smooth, distant. There was a pause. Then he asked, "Are you okay?" Claire said something about you selling the house. "Yes," I said. "It's sold. A young couple bought it. First baby on the way." His voice shifted, surprise bleeding through. "You're selling that house?" "Yes," I said again. "I won't need it where I'm going." "Where are you going?" "I don't know yet. Portland, maybe. Or somewhere warmer." "I'm exploring." Another pause. "Was it because I didn't invite you?" he asked, voice low. I didn't lie. But I didn't explain either. "It's because I realized that house belonged to a version of our lives that no longer exists. I didn't expect to ever see the house again." I had told myself that once the sale was done, I would close the door. Not just physically, but emotionally. But life, as always, has its own sense of timing. It was a rainy Wednesday when Claire messaged me. "Mom, Daniel flew into Chicago this morning. He went by the old house. He thought you still lived there." I stared at the message, confused. Then another ping. "The new owner let him in. She told him you were the one who redesigned the place." I put down my mug and sat on the edge of the sofa. For a moment, I didn't move. Just breathed. Daniel had walked back into the home he once rejected and found it no longer waiting for him. That evening, my phone rang again. His name lit up on the screen. I answered after the third ring. "Hey, Mom," he said, voice uncharacteristically quiet. I stopped by the house," the new owner told me. "You designed it." "Yes," I said. Long pause. "It looks incredible," he finally said, "like something out of a magazine. But warm, personal." "That was the idea," I replied. Another pause. Then his voice softened. "You were going to give that house to me, weren't you?" "Yes." I didn't know, he whispered. "You didn't ask," I answered. He didn't argue. He didn't defend himself. And that silence said everything. "I'm sorry," he said finally, "for not including you, for assuming you'd always be there. I thought, you thought I had nowhere else to go." I finished for him. He didn't deny it. There was no yelling, no dramatic apology. Just space. Real, honest space. Then came something I hadn't heard in years. "I'm proud of you, Mom. I wish I had seen it sooner." The next week, Daniel asked if I'd meet him for dinner. No Jasmine, no crowd, just the two of us. I hesitated before saying yes. Not because I was angry I wasn't. Not anymore. But because I needed to be sure I wasn't walking back into old patterns, the kind where I made space. And he simply took it, without noticing what it cost me. We met at a quiet Italian restaurant downtown, a place with warm lighting and linen napkins. I arrived first. When he walked in, I almost didn't recognize him, not because he looked different, but because I felt different. He smiled, nervous, unsure, not the polished law student I knew, just a son trying. "Hi, Mom." Hi, Daniel. We sat ordered wine. There was a brief silence, not awkward, just tender. He asked how I'd been. I told him honestly about the apartment, the quiet, the strange freedom of not having anyone depending on me. For the first time, he really listened. Not out of obligation, not distracted, just listened. Then he asked, "So, what now? What's next for you?" I took a sip of wine and said something I never imagined I'd say: "I don't know. And for once, that doesn't scare me." He smiled gently. "You always had a plan." I did. I nodded, and it always revolved around you. His face fell slightly. I softened my tone. "That's not blame, Daniel. That's love. But love that doesn't evolve becomes a burden. And I've carried mine for a long time." He nodded slowly. I didn't see it. I was just moving forward. "I know," I said. "But sometimes when we're moving forward, we forget to look back to see who helped carry us here." He swallowed hard. "I don't want to lose you." "You haven't," I said. "But you also don't get to keep me in the same way. I'm not just your mother anymore. I'm me." He looked at me, not like a son looks at a parent, but like a man seeing a woman he's never truly understood until now. "I want to know that version of you," he said softly. And in that moment, I saw not the boy who forgot me at his graduation, but the man who had finally grown into someone who could see me, not for what I gave, but for who I am. We talked for hours. About my dreams, about his, about how relationships, even between parents and children, have to be chosen again and again. When we said goodbye outside the restaurant, he hugged me tightly. No words, no promises, just presence. And that I realized was enough. A week after our dinner, I got a call from Margot. "Lillian," she said, "do you remember that young couple who bought your old house?" "Of course." "Well, they're having their first baby soon, and they're overwhelmed." The husband said, and I quote, "We need help making it feel like home. I mentioned you. Hope you don't mind." I froze for a moment. My house, our house, now theirs. "They want me to come back," I asked. "Not to live." Margot chuckled. "To help, to design it. They loved the way you set it up." Said it felt soft, lived in, loved. I didn't answer right away. My chest tightened not from pain, but from the weight of possibility. After a night of tossing and turning, I said yes. Returning to the house wasn't easy. I parked across the street and stared for a long time. It looked the same, but different. The curtains had changed. A wind chime danced near the porch. There was a stroller tucked behind the front door. They greeted me warmly. Young kind, hopeful. The wife said, "I don't know why, but this place already feels like someone cared for it deeply." I smiled. Someone did. We walked room by room, and when we reached the office, the room I'd once envisioned for Daniel, she stopped, turned to me and said, "I think this will be the nursery." My heart clenched, and then it released. Not because I had let go, but because I had finally accepted. That room, those walls weren't mine anymore. But the love in them, the intention was still alive. It had just changed hands. I worked with them for 6 weeks, helped choose the right crib, the softest rugs, the perfect shade of green that made the room glow with peace. I picked fabric that whispered calm, light, that embraced the windows. One afternoon, while adjusting the wall hangings, I found an old nail hole the same place where Daniel once taped a drawing, a stick figure version of us holding hands under the words, "Me and Mommy in our home." I didn't cry. I simply smiled, because in some small, unexpected way, I had made good on a promise I had built a home. Maybe not for Daniel, but for someone who saw it, wanted it, cherished it. And in doing so, I finished the room I once left unfinished. After finishing the nursery for the young couple, something inside me shifted. I had spent my whole life building spaces for others' spaces, for my children, for guests, for the future I thought I belonged in. But for the first time, I realized I had built something that wasn't just accepted, it was valued. Not as a favor, not as a sacrifice, but as a gift. Word spread mostly thanks to Margot's loose lips and big heart. A woman from church called me and asked if I could help pick colors for her kitchen. A neighbor wanted advice on arranging her furniture for better light. A retired teacher needed help turning her guest room into an art studio. At first, I helped them all for free. I didn't think of it as a business. It felt like therapy for me. Every time I helped someone reclaim a space, I reclaimed a piece of myself. Claire noticed. "You're glowing, Mom," she said one afternoon over coffee. I laughed. It's probably the paint fumes. But she leaned forward serious. "No, really. I haven't seen you this alive in years." I looked at her a little stunned. And then I said it. "I think I want to study design." Claire blinked. "Design like go back to school?" Yes, I nodded. "Not for a degree. Just a certificate. There's a program in Portland and one in Seattle. I've bookmarked them both." "You're serious?" "I am." She paused, then smiled. "I think that's brave." That night I filled out an online application. When the form asked, "Why do you want to study design?" I stared at the blinking cursor for a long time. Then I typed, "Because I've spent my whole life building for others. For once, I want to build something for me." The next morning I hit submit. And just like that, without fanfare, without anyone's permission, a new chapter began. 6 months after hitting submit, I opened a small design studio. Nothing fancy, just a corner space in a shared office building downtown with wide windows that let the morning light pour in, and a hand-painted wooden sign that read Lillian Archer Interiors. I didn't advertise. I didn't need to. Clients came, women mostly around my age or older, many of them starting over after divorce, after retirement, after loss. They came carrying floor plans, paint samples, and pain. Quiet pain, the kind you don't always name but always feel. They didn't want Pinterest-perfect homes. They wanted spaces that held them, that reminded them of who they used to be and gave them permission to become someone new. And I knew how to build that, not because I had a degree, but because I had lived it. I listened. I asked questions no one had asked them in years. What color makes you feel safe? Where do you want to cry? And where do you want to dream again? I didn't make homes pretty. I made them personal. And in doing that, I built something for myself, too. Claire visited often, bringing the twins. They'd run through the studio like it was a playground, drawing on fabric scraps and hiding behind curtain samples. One afternoon, they asked Grandma, "Why do you work with so many colors?" I smiled and said, "Because everyone deserves a space that matches the life they're growing into." Daniel called more frequently now. No more rushed apologies or empty updates. Just simple conversations. He asked about projects, about paint, about people. Sometimes he asked about me. One evening after a long call, he said, "I used to think you were just a quiet woman in the background. I didn't realize you were building something this whole time." I laughed softly. I didn't either until I stopped waiting for someone else to see it. Now I wake each morning not wondering who needs me, but asking what I want to create. Not waiting at a door with muffins and hope, but walking through new ones with purpose. I no longer live in the house I built for Daniel, but I live in the life I built for me, and that after everything is more than enough. Dear woman, who gave everything. If you're reading this, maybe you've known what it feels like to be the background in someone else's story. Maybe you've stood in doorways with food and forgiveness. Maybe you've packed dreams in boxes labeled for others. Maybe like me, you've built a home and then watched it be walked away from. I want to tell you something. You are not invisible. You are not disposable. You are not just the sum of what you gave. You are allowed to change your mind. You are allowed to stop waiting. You are allowed to reclaim your name, your time, your voice. You can start over at 65 or 75 or 82. You can begin again not in spite of your age, but because of it. You've learned how to hold others. Now learn how to hold yourself. Your softness is not weakness. Your silence was never absence. You have always been here steady, strong, sacred. So if no one has told you lately, you matter. You are worthy. And it is not too late to build something just for you. With love and understanding, Lillian.